Welcome back, folks. Let's take a look at the week of April 20th through the 26th. We've got quite a bit of energy going on this I feel like I say that every week, and I apologize if I sound repetitive. I feel like I'm going to say that for the rest of this year, to be quite honest. This spring, this year, has a lot of energy running through it, and we've got a couple of more years of really intense astrology that the United States and that the rest of the world is going to have to face off. And I apologize for the ethnocentricity of that particular statement. I've only lived in the United States my whole life, and I feel like that's the only place that I can, that's the only place of experience that I can speak from, okay? So let's just go ahead and get into the astrology. I'm going to pull up my notes as quickly as possible. So the first thing is that we just moved the sun into Taurus either yesterday or today, depends on what part of the world you live in. Happy birthday to the sun signs in Taurus. I hope that you have a wonderful day full of stuff that you enjoy, people that you enjoy being around, that kind of thing. So this is a great time to celebrate the people who are stubborn, who are obstinate in all the right ways in our life, who lay the groundwork for a lot of people to build dreams upon. We thank our earth signs for being incredible pillars of the community, most especially Taurus says, okay. Enjoy this Venus in Pisces season, by the way, Taurus. So Venus in Pisces is a great time to float through dreams, to think about what it is you'd like to see happening in your life in the future, because Venus is heavily associated with Taurus, okay? So just keep that in mind. What are you fantasizing about? What turns you on about living life? Is there something that you'd like to create as far as a small business maybe, or an art project? It is completely and totally up to you, but you've got a lot of cool things, I hope, coming to you this particular year, okay? Happy birthday once again. Let's move into Mercury moving into Aries this particular week. So this started like literally yesterday, as in the 19th of April, okay? So this potentially has a lot of power behind it depending on how it's used. This can be used on the personal level, on the macro level. It can be great in the sense that this is the mind doing, not just planning, it's actually doing stuff. And if this is a behavior that reaches the best and highest version of oneself, that's great. But then there's everything between highest version of self and worst version of self, okay? There's everything in between. Most everything is a spectrum, okay? There's not much black and white, solid black and white in the universe, okay? So there's going to be some things that don't benefit anybody, but just create some chaos with that fire and air energy, okay? So Mercury sometimes likes to fuck shit up, especially when it feels the firstness young. I literally said firstness. This is like the energy of Aries likes to have all attention on it. If anybody likes to have if anyone believes in the maxim that all attention is good attention, there may be some really powerful Mars or Aries energy in their particular chart, okay? So specifically with Mercury and Aries, it's that kind of energy where there might be people who speak out and say something that they've had on their chest for quite some time, and it might be surprising for people. During the retrograde, when Mercury was in retrograde in Aries, there may have been some conflicts that came up, or something came to a head, or you realized something for yourself that this isn't working anymore. And finally, now that it's direct, you're able to deal with that situation with some different dynamics, whether that's maybe apologizing for something that was said, or whether it's actually saying something constructive and assertive as opposed to aggressive now that you've thought out what needs to happen. And this can have to do with all channels that need communication. And to be quite frank, isn't that virtually everything to some degree? It's even in body language. You don't have to say anything to anyone in order to communicate. So just watch out for that kind of fiery air energy this particular week. These are energies that flow well together. They get stuff done, and sometimes it can be used for some really negative purposes, depending on how that particular, Mercury and Aries, where that lands in someone's birth chart. That can have a rough relationship that creates an environment that encourages the person to do something that they wouldn't otherwise, okay? Mob mentality can be an issue with this particular sign, as are, I've been saying for a while that we have the risk of attacks, specifically terroristic attacks, in a variety of places around the world, but most especially in places like where things are already tense, like the United States, for instance. There's more of that potential. But with that Mercury and Aries, what's kind of scary about that energy is that individual who may be planning something awful has the willingness to plan it. They're not just going to go willy-nilly doing something. They're not just going to flip out on the highway and suddenly decide to plow through a parade or something like that. They are the kind of people to sit back and plan, and that's the scary thing potentially about this transit. Remember that all astrological transits create environments that can be used for highest, for lowest, and everything in between, okay? That's Mercury into Aries, moving direct. We also talked about how Venus is currently moving directly through Pisces and how suns in Tauruses can really harness that energy. And also look at your birth chart. And if that energy is harmonious with this Venus in Pisces energy, that's going to be fantastic for you. I hope that you have fun thinking about what you'd like to do in the future, but don't just think about it. Actually take steps to work with that project, that dream that you've got in mind, okay? If possible, ask for help if you've got that community around you. Sometimes crowdsourcing might be the best way to go, okay? That's meant for somebody. So the next thing we got to talk about is Mars moving into Leo. And again, this is an energy that literally just happened yesterday on the 19th. As I'm recording this, okay? So you're likely going to start to feel the effects or see the effects in a particular way this week and in the next couple of weeks. Actually, you're going to feel this it's going to become intense, and I'm going to get into that for just a second because Mars in Leo is already intense. Now, as someone on the Ask Astrology subreddit, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words, discussed how this particular Mars and Leo transit encourages those who are already in power to do warlike things, to start wars, to talk war, for instance, to find ways to put themselves more on the center stage, to grab more power, whether that's, underhandedly or overtly. It doesn't really matter to these particular leader Leos. What this particular commenter in a thread on that Ask Astrology subreddit said is that because a lot of the people who are currently in power right now are born with Pluto and Leo in their birth charts, that makes this potentially a more intense transit. And when you know what I'm going to talk about here in just a second, when you already know about this, you've already been following astrology for a little bit, you know that this has the potential to create a triple threat kind of whammy. Okay, so Mars and Leo is, ideally speaking, about a leader who is willing to go to war for the right causes, for the collective's best and highest good, no matter how hard that particular path may be, no matter how long it might take. That's someone who leads people to something incredible that benefits everybody, and actually benefits everybody, that doesn't need to oppress, that doesn't need to crush minority groups in order for it to succeed. That's what I'm talking about, okay? That's a very ideal scenario. And the more negative scenario is what I discussed earlier, leaders who are willing to commit You know what? Specifically, what came to mind is that Spirit has been talking to us now for quite some time about the leadership that we currently have, encouraging terroristic attacks amongst the collective to take the attention off of what they are doing. So that's also the potential that we've got coming into. Okay, now again, I want to be careful to say that there's the risk of a possibility of this stuff happening with these particular transits. It creates the environments. It never forces anybody to do something. But if someone acts unconsciously, if they just move with whatever it is that external factors tell them, what directions they tell them to move, then we get these kinds of scenarios where someone acts rashly, or acts with a mob mentality, or creates some kind of violent terroristic attack in order to bring attention to them specifically. That's another way that Mars and Leo can manifest, is in the individual, not just the leader, okay? Just be careful of that. This is not meant to fearmonger at all, but it is intended to warn you, because being forewarned is being forearmed. Don't move about in fear. Don't think in fear. This is the time to have situational awareness, to move with focus, to not move with distraction. This is the time to put away the devices, such as our phones, for instance, that distract us, especially when moving around in public, as well as, online. Move with intention, move with focus. That's something that I personally am working on. This particular season, with Mercury being in Aries, is playing havoc with my particular chart, and it's playing havoc with my mind. I find my mind bouncing every which way 600 miles an hour, and it can be hard for me to bring my mind into focus. But I know that this is a time where anything can happen, because we are in Pluto in Aquarius. And so I try my best to stay focused 100% of the time, because there's stuff happening this year, y'all. Okay, so that's Mars and Leo, and as if Mars and Leo wasn't enough, as if it wasn't enough to have leadership with so much Pluto and Leo in their birth charts, now we also need to work with Mars and Leo opposing Pluto in Aquarius, where we are right now, with the Pluto return of the United States. This is where I kind of get more of that idea that people are just going to set off and do what they want to fight for the cause they believe in. And people are going to do that in a variety of ways. For some people, it's going to be quietly working on their spiritual aspects and working towards their best and their highest good. That's the absolute ideal and rare scenario, okay? Most people are going to be angry. A lot of people are going to be angry, and they're not going to know why they feel angry or irritated or annoyed or short with the people around them. They're going to wonder why they can't have their moment. A lot of people will wonder why they can't have their moment in the spotlight, being recognized, being first. And so you might get some people pushing around, jostling, competing with each other for a particular object or goal or whatever it may be, okay? And that's on a personal, local level. Where things get kind of crazy is on a national level. This is where the United States needs to have a reckoning with the wars that is created over the vast majority of its history. Keep in mind that the United States has been at war for the vast majority of its history, or it's been having its soldiers out somewhere to fight some battle someplace. Now, I think we have 20 peacetime years grand total over the history of the United States. So there's going to be the start of a reckoning. There is the likelihood that there's going to be the start of a reckoning for people who have taken a culture, I should say, a society that has adopted the idea of fighting for every single thing in life, competing, shoving people aside who should be our friends, who should be our allies. That's on a personal, local, and on a national level. The United States has gotten to where it is because it has relied on slave labor It has relied on cheap labor. It's relied on sweatshops, on child labor. Now, for the vast majority, if not all, I'm just going to say all of its history. Literally all of its history. Not the vast majority. So there's going to be that kind of chickens come home to roost kind of energy. And I should say that this opposition with Mars and Leo opposing Pluto and Aquarius, that began on April 20th today. Excuse me, that begins today is what I should say as I'm recording this. And it goes on until May 10th. So we're going to be sitting in this energy for a while, and there's the potential for something to start in this time period and it not be terribly noticed, like it goes under the radar of law enforcement, the FBI, for instance, or any of the three-letter agencies, and it turns into something far more explosive later on. Maybe not literally, but in terms of consequences, it turns into something that becomes something to be reckoned with. I hope that makes sense. Again, there is a way for that energy to be used ideally, even if it is an opposition. For instance, Pluto and Aquarius can reveal how the powers that be, especially in the United States, are taking advantage of the collective, with Aquarius representing the collective and Leo representing the powers that be. Also, you can find some alignment with Pluto, with all the Pluto and Leo people, with that Pluto and Capricorn, which we are still in the shadow of. Okay, so Capricorn is going to favor the powers that be, is going to favor those authoritarian structures. So there's a lot of really heavy energy going on right here that the powers that be, that the regime, the billionaire class needs to be aware of. If they're smart at all, they're going to be listening to advisors who have their ear close to the ground when it comes to people who are in poverty, who are distressed, who are oppressed as well. And, they don't have to believe in astrology to know these kinds of energies, these dynamics are growing in power, and people are getting mad and upset. They don't like being poor. They don't like having no buying power, or little to no buying power, or watching it decrease greatly over just a few short years. People don't like that. They don't like being oppressed. So, let's see what happens with the leadership. What starts with the United States leadership as well as leadership in other countries, okay? Let's just be aware. Let's watch and see what happens, but not react in fear, okay? So that's the heavy astrology with this particular week. I'm looking at the time. Yeah, I've almost got 20 minutes with the astrology. I feel like for a lot of this particular year, 2025, and next year, and the year after that, we've got a lot of heavy astrology energy that needs to be talked about. And when we are forewarned, we are forearmed. Okay? So, let's get into the oracle card section of this particular week's reading. Let's get into the energy of this week with the Uncertain Oracle by Cedar McLeod. What happens here is I shuffle until Spirit tells me to stop, and then after that, we will receive the messages that Spirit wants to give us. One fell out. Spontaneity. With Aries season coming to a close, but so much energy transiting from Pisces to Aries right now. A lot of planets are doing that rocking back and forth between Pisces and Aries. A degree of spontaneity and celebrating the end of a zodiac cycle is necessary. So relaxing, taking a step back from interactions if possible, zoning out, zenning out with your whatever it is that you need to do throughout the day if possible is what's going to be the best thing for you to do. But also leave room to bounce off the walls, zen out, but balance that out with the willingness to have fun and go out and play in the rain for a minute if that, I know it sounds cheesy, but it isn't at all when you think about how necessary it is to go out and play. Our inner child needs to be nourished, just like our inner adult needs to feel supported and stable. And the way we do that is by having a strong, powerful relationship with our inner children. Okay, going to continue to shuffle. That fell out. If any other cards want to fall out, that'd be fantastic. Okay. Treasure the moments that you have going out throughout the day. Sorry that my camera's bad enough that you can't read the writing. I hope that you can kind of see something there at the bottom. Treasure each moment that spontaneity gives you. This is especially something that when you reconnect to nature, which everybody needs to do to a certain degree, especially when we have really big moments where things feel awful, when it feels like the walls are pressing in around us, getting amongst greenery when possible, or getting out in the middle of nature. You might be in the desert and greenery is not something you get to see very often, but getting out amongst nature and enjoying yourself for just a few minutes is going to be key to getting your anxiety down throughout these next few weeks. Having a sense of playfulness is what's going to help you get through these particular situations, national situations, without feeling so weighed down that you can't get through the day. This is going to be a time where a lot of people are at risk of suicide because things have changed so radically and so quickly, and for the worse, that people are going to give up on life. They're going to say life was already hard enough and this is too hard. Please don't let this be you, is all I'm asking. Okay? We've got variable, and that's last and not least. We've pulled this particular card before in relatively recent readings, and that talks to me about how things are still very much up in the air with Pluto and Aquarius. Expect the unexpected. Expect black swan events. So things are still changing. There are still things that we're not allowed to see when it comes to the future and what is most likely going to happen, what the universe needs to happen in order for positive change to come in for everybody around the world on a personal level and on a macro level. But that doesn't mean that those events won't be catastrophic, that they won't be traumatic, and that they won't fundamentally change the course of history for a nation, for a community, or for you personally. Things are still up in the air, and things may get worse, they may get better, they may stay the same. We all have free choice. When I talk about astrological transits, all they do is create the environments for certain decisions to be made on all levels of society. And we have free will. We still have free will. We don't have to make a particular choice in any particular direction. We have many, many choices that we can make in some scenarios. Sorry I touched the mic. But above all, this is the time to come into a kind of awareness about yourself, about how you react to the environment around you. This is not the time to respond in knee-jerk reactions, whatever we have coming in the future. And also, I saw that with the election that a lot of astrologers and psychics and mediums and those kinds of people got a lot of flack after Harris wasn't elected because they predicted that she would. And that's not, in fact, what happened for whatever reason, okay? Whether you believe the underground discussions that, in fact, this was a cheated election, or whether you believe that it's legitimately won, there's still a lot of people who are reeling from that, who are cycling through their thoughts, and they may end up doing some desperate things. There's the risk of that, because they see how wrong things have gone since then, how realities feel as if they have shifted, and I'm not the only one who said that. But just keep in mind that we're sometimes not allowed to see a particular event because the universe needs it to happen a particular way, and that's going to make a lot of people upset because they feel like we often feel like we have the right to access all kinds of information from Spirit, and Spirit is not an unthinking entity that just gives us things when we try to manifest them. The universe has a plan for the human race. or the race that's living on this particular planet, okay? As well as for other races that might be on other planets or probably will be, okay? But the universe needs this story, this human story, to go in a particular direction, and sometimes that means not knowing the plot. And that's going to be hard to swallow for a lot of people. I know that it was for me. I know that it continues to be for me because I'm someone who enjoys being prepared. Anyway, I don't mean to ramble. I feel like I rambled a little bit back there. I apologize. So what I want to get into next is the White Numen Tarot. I'll show you the box. Snap. Make noise. There you go. That's what it looks like. There's the front. There's the back. Gorgeous particular deck by Alba Gonzalez. And I apologize for hitting the mic. There are no reversals right now. I'm going to shuffle a little bit before I actually cut reversals in. I just want to get a little bit more off of the energy of this particular week that we've got coming up in front of us, the 20th of April through the 26th, 2025. Some reversals got cut in, I noticed, as I was shuffling. So, there we go. There we go, half and half. And now we shuffle until Spirit asks me to stop. More of the story around the energy that we've got coming up this week. Here in the United States, for the USA Collective, can be residents / citizens versus not. You can just be living in the United States. We've got the Ace of Cups in reverse, which flipped out. Let's do a Celtic cross. Ace of Cups is the central theme. It's about a loss of love for each other, for self, about a loss of self-love. It's about the cup running dry, compassion running dry, a feeling of detachment from spiritual connections, feeling of detachment from emotional self, lack of emotional intelligence even, an unwillingness to take an emotional opportunity. There's all kinds of ways this card could go. We have the Five of Swords. This is the challenge card. It's pointing up towards, or I should say it's pointing over towards the past. There you go. There's the central theme. There's the challenge card. There's going to be a lack of compassion for one's neighbor, and there's going to be conflict with that Five of Swords. It's going to feel like darker, shadowy energies are going to have the upper hand, going to have the upper victory. Be cautious of this particular energy of feeling like we're losing. Be cautious of identifying not just with the ego within yourself, but within a collective ego, such as this is my side, us versus them. That kind of, I hope I'm making sense. But be aware of conflict. This is the time to pull back and focus on yourself, really and truly. But also be aware that other people are going to be feeling this energy. This is something that's been building up from the past and has the potential to blow up in our faces. That's the second time that I've felt led to say something around the word explosive. So just be aware of that. So this card flipped out, and this is the card that was on the bottom of the deck. Let's build the past. We've got the Page of Swords. Thought it was Wands with that reddish energy. Page of Swords in the past. This is not a message that was heeded. It was sent, but people didn't listen. They didn't pay attention. And now things are going to have the potential to spiral out of control. I'm sorry about my words, okay? Five of Pentacles up top in the conscious position. This is a poverty mindset. This is refusing help from other people out of a sense of pride, out of a sense of self-pity, unwillingness to accept help. This is unwise behavior. There's help all around this particular entity, but this is someone who's refusing it, even though it's all around them. This person could literally get up and grab these coins, these pentacles. They choose not to. This seems to be more like a United States collective kind of feeling, and I hate to paint with a broad brush, okay? These tend to be like some of the loudest people, the most influential people, not necessarily the wisest, most above board kind of people, okay? Excuse me. In the unconscious position below the central theme, we have the Fool. It's in reverse. This is about jumping off the wrong ledge. It's like the Fool had a couple of different options, a couple of different ledges, choices to make, and the Fool jumped off of the worst possible cliff that they could find, and now it's plummeting to its death. It's like a butterfly effect kind of thing. A choice was made by a couple of choices were made by a few individuals, and that led to a domino effect. And now, like, I'm getting like the government, the regime that we currently have in place, they've made choices that have created domino effects for everybody except for them. And now we have no other choice but to abide by the consequences of their choices. It's going to be like this idea of being yoked, chained around the neck to the choices that just a few people in power make. It's going to suck. Like we've been saying now for a number of months, or the Spirit has been saying now for a number of months. This is in the future. This Five of Swords is going to make it so that the Hermit is not allowed to leave his mountain cave where he's been growing and developing into a spirit animal. In this particular case, this is a moose that's about to lose his horns if he can let them go. But in this particular case, the moose says, I refuse to grow any further, and I'm going to stay in this cave. I'm not going to fully transform into a spirit animal. This is a nation that has chosen, as a result of infighting, to not take the chance for spiritual reflection, for spiritual growth. This is a nation that has chosen to go backwards when it comes to how it grows, how it changes for the better, or how it changes for the worse. This nation has chosen the worst possible options in a variety of options, and now we have no choice but to bear up under the consequences. Not intending to fearmonger, but forewarned is forearmed. Okay. Continuing to take from the top, we've got the Ace of Swords landing in the advice position, building the rod. This is stop what you're doing. Stop what the fuck it is you're doing. You're doing so much damage right here. Stop what it is that you're doing before you do more damage. This sword is double-edged, and all it's doing right now is hurting yourself, okay? That's the advice, but I don't believe for a New minute that the regime that's currently in place is ever going to follow. They are going to slash and cut until there's nothing left, that they can't squeeze this stone anymore because they can't get any more out of it for themselves. We have the Knight of Swords. Nightmare scenario. This is landing in the current environment. For a lot of people who don't know what's coming, this is blissful detachment, blissful ignorance, okay? For a lot of people, they have no idea what's coming. But when they wake up from this dream, that's when it becomes a nightmare, and that's when those swords fall on that particular entity that's trying to sleep underneath them, but can't. The nightmare is on its way, but most people haven't woken up to it, haven't awakened to it yet. And this is not the time to try to force their eyes open, colloquially speaking, okay? This is the time to step back and work with yourself. This is the time to start a meditative practice if you haven't already. There's all kinds of wonderful beginners videos on YouTube, ones that I've taken advantage of, and there's all kinds of delightful meditative soundscapes out there. You just need to find one that works for you. What meditation does is that it allows us to dissolve our ego, dissolve our attachment to our ego, and also to dissolve our attachment to a collective ego, whatever that may be. That doesn't mean at all that you lose your identity. That means that you come into your best, you integrate, in fact, with your best and your highest good, and your identity melds, joins together with your best and your highest good. You get the best version of yourself most of the time. You're still human, okay? But that's what meditation does for us ultimately. And this is the time to use that energy because Pluto in Aquarius is going to bless that. Aquarius has often changed the way that faiths, entire religions change and how their dynamics function in the world. So don't be surprised if some things happen when it comes to faith and religion, when it comes to how they serve the people or how they change in order to serve the people better is what I should say, okay? So this is landing in the hopes and fears position. Literally, the worry is that we're going to lose everything. Somebody's worrying about we're going to lose everything, or that we have already lost everything because we've gone down this particular path. That's a real fear. And the hope is that not everything is lost, but the fear is that it's too late to save. Well, with the Pentacles, that you can say that this is too late to save the structures that have functioned for quite a long time, whether that's economic structures, whether that's government structures or judicial structures. That doesn't matter. Ultimately, there's that sense that this stability that makes our bodies comfortable is disrupted, is not coming back. And people are scrambling and wondering how they're going to break that to the people, which is us, the USA Collective, okay? I'm assuming that you're in the United States. I apologize for saying us, okay? One more up top, Five of Cups. And I wondered when this card was going to come up because it sure popped into my head just a second ago. It's in reverse. You know, a while back, I think it was like MSNBC had a short where they pulled from a Fox clip of a tarot reader pulling up the Rider-Waite-Smith Five of Cups. And the poor tarot reader said, because she's live. And all these co-hosts are asking, what's that? What's that? What's that? What does that mean? And she goes, well, and that's where the clip cuts off, the short cuts off. And the person doing the MSNBC clip says, oh my goodness, that's death. And I'm like, no. That's about not being able to move out of a grief stage. Whether upright or in the reversal, it's about potentially, one meaning is that here's grief and here's grief cubed. Like this is someone who has grieved for so long that they're in a state of depression, and that's in the outcome position, okay? So that's my little story about the Five of Cups, but I just found it interesting that now, like 2 weeks in a row, we have this Five of Cups energy and across two different decks. Last week it was the Light Seers Tarot. This week it's the White Numen. Here's what's going on here. I take the Advice card, which is the Ace of Swords, and then I take the Future card, and I combine it together with, here we go, with the Outcome card, and I develop a story based on this. So if we are to follow the advice to stop what it is that we're doing, to stop what it is we're planning as well, and I'm talking about the government that's currently in place. There's nothing that you or I, the little people, can do anything to affect this particular situation, okay? But the collective is refusing to acknowledge that this is happening, that bad things are happening, that things that they are going to regret forever, for generations, is happening. And there's nothing really that they can do about it. So, what can you do to handle this? Since the train has started to flow down the tracks and it cannot be stopped, who are we going to choose to be? This is the future. Now, the hermit moose can continue to stay in his little mountain cave, or he can go through his moment, become stable, ground himself, and eventually choose to leave. This is not a stagnant card, but he sure can stay stagnant. We sure can, the individual sure can stay stagnant, and a lot of people will choose to be so. You don't need to spend more time around those people. You don't. You do deserve to let those people go out of your life and flow with people who do want to come into their best, their highest good, in spite of being forced to go through things that they cannot change. And there are some people who can become the best versions of themselves in spite of the fact that they are forced to abide by the choices that a particular government makes for them. You can be different. And there are a lot of cool people watching this channel, so I know that you will choose to be different in spite of how hard that it might be some days. So, that was the energy for the week of April through the 26th, April 20th through the 26th. Thank you for being patient with me while I stumbled over my words today. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, a great week. I will see you later. Take care.